Today, we initiate a very interesting discussion, and it gives me pleasure to tell you that our today's theme is the pivot point in a time of rapid change, how to adapt to the current rapid change of everything. Rapid is something I would like to emphasize. The very theme we're about to discuss with my colleagues, with Herman Gref and with Sergey Ryazanskiy, this theme has a secret, has some mystery to it. So, knowing my colleagues, I'll take the risk of asking a very short question beforehand, if you don't mind. We'll begin with this question. You know, there is a test that shows whether we are adapting or whether we are doing something else. German, Sergey, have you ever run into this situation when some good people came over to you and they asked you, do you want this more than everyone else or something? So, yes, very often. Sergey, I see. So you often hear that question. And what about you, German? I think this is quite a typical situation. When you start doing something that is not going to be straightforwardly approved by society because the consequences of what you're doing are not yet clear, not yet obvious. And when you have to explain, you know, the prospects of something that is far from obvious at this point of time. When you think, however, that these consequences are very likely to arrive, and especially when you bear the responsibility not just for yourself, but when you're also responsible for a big organization whose future will, to a large extent, determine the future of the whole industry in this particular country, and other industries as well. Well, of course, in that case, it's very hard to explain sometimes, and it's not always accepted right away by those around you. And there is this temptation to, you know, just sit this over, do nothing, but sometimes you have to make these decisions. And when the outcome is not certain, it's very hard to garner approval. Yes, that's absolutely correct. I think that when you act, very often you run into a situation when you have to search for a solution that is not obvious right away. And what helps you then? What can help you is having a vision of the prospects not yet seen by others. So finding a pivot point is always about making a choice, making a decision for yourself, resolving yourself to take the risk. So whether you take this risk or whether, you know, at this point in time, at my age, I dare not have my own convictions, as the famous saying goes. So it's either this or that. And when you make this decision, you shape the future. And shaping the future is always something that involves choice. German, you handed me over a very interesting book. It is Eager Choice. I have this book on me today, and this is not for advertisement purposes. If something has shaken you, I've been shaking by that as well. And I've been shaken by this revelation of a situation of having no exit, having no outcome. What's absolute evil? Absolute evil is when there is no alternative. And there needs always be a choice. So why has this book so shaken you? Why are you trying to share this book with others, searching for a pivot point? Yeah, I know this is something similar to Viktor Frankl. This is another person who is also an existentialist and who's probably seen it all in this world. And Edith is a woman who has seen no less than Viktor Frankl, as far as I understand. And this book is very interesting. It has turned my emotional worldview upside down, because Edith is very open about her own emotions. She wrote this book when she was quite advanced in years, and she writes about events that had taken place a long time ago, but they're still very fresh in her memory. And she explains these points in time, these pivot changes. And she speaks about her family, the principles, the culture inculcated in her by her parents. And unfortunately, she had to leave her parents. They were separated. Edith, however, managed to preserve this motivation for life, and this was due to the fact that she had to care for her sister. She demanded this care, she needed it. And this is where the motivation stemmed from, and it gave this fragile woman to take resolute steps. And she managed to help a great number of people throughout her life path. And then, when she was 50, she decided to change her life radically. She decided to get a new education, to write a thesis. And when she turned 90, she still continues to share her experience and to help as many people as she can. And I think this is why this book is so important. This book has been written by a person who has lived through all of this while managing to keep fresh all the facets of emotions that she felt in the past, and she is willing to share that with others. And you do not often come across such works. I haven't seen many works like that. Yes, there is Viktor Frankl, a wonderful book, Say Yes to Life. It's written for children, and I think it's one of the most outstanding ones. And Edith Eve Eger, she's yet another person who has done something extraordinary, living the life like the one she did, and she shared her secrets, innermost secrets, sharing with other people. So you mentioned this row of wonderful books, Viktor Frankl, the author of one book, from a death camp to existentialism. This book, in its very title, sets some existential problems. So you might feel that you are at the very bottom, that everything is impossible, and yet you manage to come across a pivot point, and you emerge from these trials and tribulations. Sergey, and how did you get into outer space? Could you tell us about your experience? You know, it fully corresponds to the theme of our discussion. You always come across uncertainties that are so numerous in outer space, and you, Herman, you also come across uncertainties of the financial, economic world and I come across uncertainties in the world of psychology. We are swimming in this sea of uncertainty. And as Viktor Frankl says, whatever happens to us, we find this pivot point and we say yes to life. So what about you, Sergey? When and how did you find this pivot point, and how did you manage to ascend to outer space? And I do not say ascend in the biblical sense of the word, I'm sorry. Well, I happened to get to outer space, and I think it was a coincidence. Well, at first I was in virology, and then in human physiology, and then I got into the squad. And when I was a very young crew member, I was not yet a commander, and I had stories about there being everything precise in outer space. And you know, my commander, he lent to me, and he said very quietly, Sergey, remember, nothing is gonna go according to plan. And this is something that we repeat all the time during our space flights. Everything is gonna go not according to plan. And that is what they teach to astronauts, to cosmonauts. You've got to be ready for changes because nothing goes according to plan. However many wishes you hear that everything goes according to plan, no, something is gonna pop up. It's going to be either something minor or something major, and you need to be ready. And of course, your pivot point is your crew, not just people on board, but also the services on the ground, at the flight control center, the scientists, the doctors, everyone. And of course, your family. You miss your family when you're in space, but you've got the psychological support service, and the most important function performed by this service is to set up a connection. Either you get some greetings from your friends when your friends have recorded a poem, or someone from your family, or someone from the musicians, you know. This used to be the case during the Soviet times. There were musicians, there were some artists who spoke to the cosmonauts in space via this remote connection. So you're a professional, you understand that it's just 1.5 millimeters thick of material of the International Space Station that separates you from outer space, and you can get tired, you can even get tired with your most favorite job. And that is when this pivot point comes into play. It's of great help. You know, Herman, Sergey has just said something very psychologically, humanely apt, and we need to reflect on that. Sergey, remember, everything is not going to go according to plan. So it's like an instruction. It's a gateway that leads us to the key to acting in this world of uncertainty. So, however negative this instruction might sound, it helps us get rid of this fear of uncertainty, fear of change. So, how often do you have to tell your crew, just remember, I intend to do this and that, I plan for this and that, but remember that something and everything might not go according to plan? Yes, that's absolutely correct, because everything changes, and tomorrow won't be anything like what we were planning before. But that means that we've got to be ready, and we spend a lot of time on getting ready, on preparations. But, you know, surprise and uncertainty are different things. They have to be distinguished between. If there's something surprising happening, you have to be very careful, because, you know, instincts kick in. And as far as is concerned, cosmonauts, astronauts, they also train to make sure that when surprise hits, something unexpected, their instincts kick in and they act automatically. And we need that automatic response in a situation when, you know, you might get confused or bewildered if something unexpected happens. And Very often, it's very hard to anticipate how exactly this or that person is going to act in a time of surprise, of something unexpected. But sometimes you plan for something, you have plans, and then something's going not according to plan. Yes, this can be a shock, but it is also an intellectual and emotional challenge. Yes, we were getting ready, but something has not gone according to plan, but we will cope with that. So these are different things, and that is what Sergey has said. When cosmonauts go through their preparations, through their training, they are taught that something is not going to go according to plan. So you have to be very careful. And, in this particular case, you have to avoid instincts from kicking in, because you need to act with reason. Yes, instincts are some typical templates of behavior. So when a step is considered as, a tendency to flight, and jumping is like trying to fly away, so sometimes, yes, we do need these instincts, some automatic responses to cope with surprise, with something unexpected. But this pivot point, it's inside us too. And two of my colleagues who've joined me here, they avoided this trap. So, Sergey, when did you feel that you need to shape yourself instead of just, adapting to what already exists, instead of getting into this Precrustian bed? Yes, the world is changing at an immense pace, and you've got to go and keep abreast with it, at least, or move at a higher clip. And, when your commanders tell you that you will never fly, and when there is a very strong military lobby and they say that a civilian and also a botanist cannot ever be a cosmonaut, but, it still happens. There are some people who are paralyzed when they come across something unexpected, and they cannot become cosmonauts. They won't be recruited as ones. Whereas I feel this thrill. If you ever jumped with a parachute, we also do that, and this is part of our stress training. And when you jump, you have a special card on your wrist, and you have to address this problem. You've got to solve it, and then there is also a recorder, and after the jump, the scientists, they calculate everything. They see how fast you solved the problem, how much you cursed, how stressful it was for you. Of course, every person has fears, but what we are taught is to act in cold blood with reason. So it's you who should control your instincts, not the other way around. And this is the automatic response we're seeking. So in a very critical situation, you have to be absolutely calm. You've got to be able to report what's happening, because, the ground needs to understand what was happening during the flight, before, afterwards. It's immensely exciting. When I first started training, and I'm a physiologist, and I understood that these training sessions were anti-physiological, so they were acting against the human physiology. Because stress is a natural reaction, and you have tension in your muscles if there is a stressful situation. But what they force you to do when getting ready to become a cosmonaut is to be absolutely relaxed and still keep your bearings. And besides that, you still have to perform these tasks. There is an instructor flying around you. He shows you what to do. And, incidentally, Americans, they don't do the same training. They abandon this training at some point of time, and we still do that because in terms of practical preparations for stressful situations, for dangers in outer space, there's nothing better than that so far. Why do you think the Americans abandoned this training practice? Well, it's an open secret that both in Russia and in the US, most cosmonauts are pilots. Not a single normal pilot is not going to escape on their own from the flying aircraft. No one likes jumping with a parachute because it's also something that involves a risk. Well, we consider that and we qualify that as a justified risk, even though it's still a risk. And yes, I broke a leg when jumping with a parachute. Well, luckily, everything turned out fine, and it didn't have any negative impact on my future, but, you know, you never know what might happen. I think that the result, the outcome you get in the course of this training is far more important. And, well, you know, when I became an instructor myself, I understood, after training young people, that I was ready to fly with them. I knew they would be absolutely composed, they would be very calm, and could act with reason. Sergey, you said something very salient. And from analyzing what you were speaking about, you ventured into a new field entirely. You said that in this particular case, physiology does not apply. We have some adaptive schemes in our conscience, homeostatic schemes.
When a human starts winning thanks to homeostasis and comes into a state of balance, despite some claims that, well, you will not be able to do that, he or she is launched and flies into the open space. And when you were told that that will not lift off, what was your response? Because you must be well accustomed to risk, being an astronaut. Well, the main question is always why and what for. If a person says that you will not fly, there must be an explanation. Well, I think that a habit to make a sound analysis should come first. And if a person says, if an individual says that something is unattainable, unaccomplishable, we must find out why. If there is some expert opinion behind as a rationale, it must be taken into account. But if it is about just idle reflexes or speculations that may not be worth taking into account. But anyway, all non-evident and new fresh things are related to the decision-making process. Well, we teach people to manage their time. Well, the clock is behind us. Well, you cannot manage time. You can manage your humble self in this time space, in this time domain. I believe that time is kind of variable between the cause and effect. And time gives us oxygen to breathe, to be able to go by, and sometimes it's across a distance, and there is always the cause and effect between what you do today and the after effects or repercussions that come tomorrow. Nothing happens all of a sudden, neither in space nor in business or at crisis situation. There is always cause and effect. There is a chain of developments that will be preceding and eventuality, you may turn to neglect that, to turn a blind eye on that. But all of a sudden that will erupt into the open eventually, and we shouldn't miss out on those cause and effect laws and rules, and you should have your senses well tuned to be able to see and guess in advance all those unobvious reasons that may lead to brand new consequences. And I always try to analyze that, to have all those unexpected things on the fingertips, to try to foresee and foretell future possible externalities. And if something happens that I haven't been able to foresee or foretell, and I always try to analyze with hindsight what I did wrong, whether it is my fault or the fault of the system that I installed, or whether it's about the culture of a 300,000 strong company of ours. But we must be well prepared and well tuned to be able to make timely decisions. Because I hate unexpected situations, and we shouldn't end up in an unexpected situation. We should avoid that. So our goal is, overarching goal is to be able to identify the cause and effect, to manage the effect side, to have a sway over the after effects or possible negative repercussions that may come to the fore. Okay, you've been talking about very important things. In passing, you have mentioned now that a brilliant manager in an unexpected situations context is someone who has his or her senses well tuned, and Gumilev described the sixth sense phenomenon. Like having this sixth sense is being able to see the non-obvious things. And at the current juncture of our development, how can that be taught? But that brings us back to a question. Like when you devised the development strategy of Sber, you emphasized the development of human capital and potential. You made this point each and every time. So what prompted you to lay emphasis on that? Do you believe that the personal potential of individuals would help construct and design the non-obviousness senses? Well, you are right, there are different levels and tiers of organizational culture. Managing with a simple toolkit becomes impossible at a certain stage, and you can start managing the individual's behavior. And at a certain stage, you become capable of managing the people's behavior by managing yourself. You should convince people to do this or that thing. And, well, the act of persuasion is only possible if they have an acceptable or positive role model in front of them. Like a manager's job. I wouldn't like to use the management master term, because all of us are learners in this respect. So if you work hard to improve yourself, and if you have gone through all these stages yourself, like if you jump out of a plane with a parachute and I was stupid enough for the first time to jump myself, and when it was my second time, I was pushed out. Oh, you helped out, yes. And we had obsolete parachutes, and it wasn't the best experience I had had. So I think that this understanding of the fact that self-development, self-management, and maintaining a proper energy balance and equilibrium for oneself is a key factor of an individual's success in future and a company's success. You know, I had a transformation going for a number of years. I worked 20 hours a day, and I slept for no more than 3 to 4 hours. It was an adrenaline rush that lasted for years for me. Well, I was not only experimenting on myself, but on other people too, and people had to work in the same mode, and many of them failed, and they resigned, and they had issues with their health, and it took me years to understand that quality always matters a lot, not only quantity. It is important to give people an opportunity to have a proper energy balance, and having a normal energy would entail having life goals. Professor Karavayev, a well-known Professor Karavayev, once said that if an individual loses a purpose in his life, well, his or her body would start destroying itself. If this goal in life is lost, the internal processes would move towards self-destruction, because there may occur an impression that your mission in life is complete and you must be done away with. And I remember my parents saying that, oh, we have been working hard on life, and then as soon as we retire, we'll start a proper life. And when they retire, it turns out that their whole life was subject to work. And when this is gone, people are unprepared, and they are plagued by diseases, as it is a huge psychological stress, and a mental upheaval happens, this mental shift. So the burnout is similar to that. While a person may be successful on the face of it, and having it all may be the main reason behind the burnout. Like the state when you have nothing and you start accusing everyone around you, and that brings about emotional emaciation. This is one thing. Well, anyway, I think that our own ego, Satan or devil, is a major hindrance, because you start accusing the world of the unfair framework or landscape, and that offsets the vision of happiness. Or when a person may have it all, and there are no obvious needs in front of him or her. Well, this emotional burnout may happen. Both categories, both states require psychological assistance. That was neglected in our country for quite a few years, and as Sergey has said, well, we want the psychological assistance service, and during the COVID pandemic, these services are in demand. from the employees when they talk to professionals that explain it to an individual that the situation is not unique in a calm and soothing voice. That is okay, and people are set at ease. Well, I want to come back to the thought that you mentioned, like you are successful and you have achieved it all in life, and there are no more things to accomplish, and in a well-known psychophysiologist has named it, has dubbed it as the Martin Eden syndrome, because you have reached this summit, the top, and there are no other summits to conquer. You have fulfilled yourself, because the word success may be a trap in itself, and the happiness strategy is not about doing one's best to accomplish and achieve success, but to be happy. Because we all have always been mentioning sustainable development concept, but does sustainable development exist, and can we strive for this sustainability? Can we covet this sustainability? It may be a provocative question, but you know, when something pops up that you mentioned, but by the word the sudden effect, I recall a quote by Bulgakov, you know, a brick never falls down on someone's head accidentally. You know, is it not a trap to speak of the sustainable development concept at a time of rapid change? Is it worth saying and repeating all the time, adapt, adapt, adapt? Adaptation may be a trap in development, or am I wrong? Sergey, you know, seeking sustainability is what we need, but we cannot probably accomplish it altogether, because you should accept as a given thing that stress will accompany us in life. It's normal, and change is normal, and we will not have stability forever. Stability is illusory. It's a delusion altogether. In space, we may have the planned abnormal situations. Well, it is kind of okay, and we have planned everything and factored everything in. But then we start asking ourselves, what if this module falls apart? What if we run short of oxygen? What shall we do then? And the more similar situations, model situations, we simulate within a crew, the more resilient our crew would be when something abnormal happens. And our instructors always tell us, just if you give an order, straight away try to think what happens if it doesn't work. And I recall once I talked to Chris Hadfield, a Canadian astronaut, a colleague of mine, a very good person who speaks very good Russian, and he wrote a book. And once he said, Sergey, we are both professionally deformed. Like I enter a lift and I start thinking what happens if this lift won't go up or down. And it's automatic, and my wife laughs, saying that normal people have plan A and plan B, and my husband, apart from that, has plan C, plan D, etc. So this preparedness for change is inherent with us. And I often read lectures in Russian and English, like in the past, like the leadership, the motivation, and the teamwork skills were high on the agenda, and now no one mentions that. What is discussed is preparedness for change, emotional burnout, and working under stress. And it's clear that the pandemic has pushed our world and the business community to change, but people are reluctant, are loath to change. They keep saying that, oh, I miss my office, but it's gone, it's been sold. And people are not ready to change because they felt comfortable back then. And you know, what distinguishes a successful person is preparedness for change. Because he or she may like it, or because it is necessary, or because they see it as their mission. I come back once again to the planned abnormal concept of yours. Just recall Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin, the famous Russian poet, who was good in providing diagnosis, and he said that genius is a friend of paradox. You know, we should be able to work and to deal with paradoxes, to handle paradoxes that may be a testimony of the preparedness for change. And you wanted to say something, Mr. Gref, and probably I interrupted you. I butted in. You know, I am always asked how to achieve success and how to be successful. But we should first of all give a definition of success. What is success? What is a successful individual? Like some external things, like having a car and a cottage. All those material, monetary things. I know a lot of entrepreneurs and rich people that are well-to-do, but many of them are inherently unhappy. So the successful and the happy circles, do they overlap? And what is the overlapped area? Not too many happy people among successful. And probably all the happy people believe that they are successful, on the contrary, because they don't need any recognition, any formal recognition of their success, any formal signs. And I grasped for happiness for a number of years. I tried to figure what it may be. And there are many definitions, starting from esoteric and exotic ones and up to technological definitions. And for me, feeling happy means being filled with energy. How can one ask if a person is happy or not if this individual is exhausted? And we all end up in these states every now and then. And what you should do is to control your inner energy. But how can that be controlled is question number one. And how can you manage yourself being exhausted or emaciated? You cannot manage or control yourself. It is a delusion, and you start making mistakes. You stop controlling yourself, and you begin to accuse all the world around you. And you may be whining and crying and accusing everyone around you in this case, but the main underlying reason for that may be that your energy vessel is not full. And what is called soft skills now, like this attempt at giving the people, the children, the well-ingrained approaches that the humanity had found to maintain the proper energy state and the mental health and the moral health and the health of the society is a handy thing, an instrumental thing. And, you know, I recalled one thing I read in a book, I forget its name, when, well, it said success
так называемый
Well, the so-called
позорный хлеб.
shameful bread is a shameful bread or disgraceful bread when, like, a son was a football fan and the father wanted to give his son a gift and he paid everybody. It was a fixed match and all of a sudden the team scored several goals. And this boy scored a goal and another goal, and the team wins. And this boy is happy, full of energy, ebullient, crying happily and embracing all his team members. And all of a sudden, he sees the goalkeeper of the adversary team approaching his father, and the father gives money to that goalkeeper, and the boy understands that it had been fixed by his father, and this is the shameful bread. And in an instant, that energy vessel that had been full all of a sudden becomes empty and void, and all the enthusiasm and thrill gives way to tears, and the boy starts crying bitterly. And when parents call and say, my kid is so good, is unique, please give him a good position, I start thinking, oh my God, we're trying to send our children to outer space, to launch them to outer space without having the experience of jumping out with a parachute and feeling all the freeze and all the horror that I had jumping with a parachute. Because the second time was the hardest for me, because I was aware what was coming, and it takes time to adapt. Well, it is so detrimental. Our behavior to our children, like we are trying to put them in a greenhouse, like, so that they cannot adapt to life. And what we want is to fill them with energy, but instead they start eating the shameful bread. And you cannot deceive them afterwards that it was your dad who had arranged for you to go to this university or to this job, and no one would see you as a valuable employee afterwards. One of our tests is like we vote at the HR Commission. Each year we have a meeting discussing all the pros and cons of the heads of our units. And one of the tests would be voting who would take this person into her team. And we have around 15 people in the alpha level. And we see how many points each of the candidates scores. It is a very good test. These are very simple things that we may step aside from every now and then, and like time is not a barrier between action and repercussion. Time is our natural environment that coagulates the first and the last thing, the latter and the former. That changes the attitude of individuals to the course of development. I always recall a Cinderella formula: your time is up and our time is running short. It's gonna elapse, And my colleagues that do neuroprogramming say that the shameful bread effect is very good for educating and upbringing, because it demonstrates how we steal our children's lives, wishing them well. You know, we always rejoice when a kid resembles us. We say, oh, how good, but, you know, we are even happier when a kid is different from us, but someone else from the outside tells us, oh, what a brilliant child. Well, we should, well, Akhmatova said once that I have a lot chores today and I must finish off my memory. I need my heart to harden and I need to learn how to live once again. So, you know, setting a goal and seeing prospects for future is of paramount importance, and, you know, feeling the beat and the potential of a team. And Sergey, well, selecting a team or a crew, will you take Herman on board? Yes, I would. And Herman, would you take Sergey on board? Well, it's a kind of a game we're playing now, but, you know, the psychological phenomenon for risk, for the sake of risk, is well known to everybody, and I like the goal setting. You know, when Athos and Aramis were asked in a novel by Alexander Dumas why they fought D'Artagnan, and they invented plain reasons, and Porthos said, Stop fighting, stop the tussle. He said, I fight because I fight. This was a unique formula because, well, it means being prepared for a change of everything.
Well, you know, the three musketeers, you know, they glanced at one another. And it's all better now that we remember the three musketeers. Yes, you know, it always gives me pleasure to invite Sergey to all kinds of meetings at Sberbank. My crew love him because he's always filled with enthusiasm, with energy, and he is not afraid to share with others without losing any of it. So it's kind of a mending, producing energy, and you know, sometimes the more you give away, the more you get back. So probably we do have a perpetuum mobile inside of us, the eternal engine. But in response to your question, I am a little different than Porthos. I'm not going to fight just for the sake of fighting. I'm not willing to do that. I'm more rational, more pragmatic. The more I live, the more thought I'm trying to give to why I'm living, what I'm living for. And this is something you need to teach. You need to teach people how to manage yourself, how to manage your time, how to set your objectives, how to make decisions. These are key skills. And there is a big chunk of science behind that. You know, now that you sing this, once again, my heart beats in sync. You know, we remembered Viktor Frankl's great formula. He who knows how to do something, why you are doing this, you will be able to do that. And without the energy, we find ourselves exhausted and we turn into hollow husks without energy. if there are no ties, no energy inside of us. Unfortunately, our time is running short. But we started today with the question of why, the question about the sense, the reason, and this is the question we have to ask from the outset. And I've got something prepared for you. You spoke about this critical situation you face in your life, the situation of choice. Well, everyone knows Frankl, but not everyone knows Bruno Belging. And even despite the death camps, he managed to come up with a system about living through changes, through tribulations. And this book is called An Enlightened Heart, the autonomy of human in mass societies. And right now there is a great demand for individuality, for change, amid everything that is happening, a mass demand. And you said that today. You spoke about the demand for developing your personal potential. And I think we will conclude by saying that we will develop ourselves. And, we need to do that in reality, not just trying to impress someone just for ostentation. So I would like to present this book to you, Sergey, Herman. This book is called Enlightened Heart, and it teaches us that even the most difficult situations still give us maneuver for choice. Thank you very much for this magic of conversation, of communication. Thank you for once again confirming that there is happiness outside of just sheer well-being. Thank you.